Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. 444 days, 737 days. What happens when the world is held hostage? Because it's not just the people who are held, it is all of us. And I think that the reason why there is such empathy in the United States of America for Israel and its plight is not just because Israel is a close ally and friend of the United States, but because we know what it means to be held hostage. So I wanted to begin today by pointing that out. Also, to react to a number of you who have indicated to me that you just don't understand how I can say something nice about Donald Trump. When someone does something as positive as what Donald Trump has done, you have to be positive. You have to say nice things, not because you want to be nice, but because you have to be honest. Donald Trump has really taken a gamble, and the gamble paid off, and he deserves credit for the fact that it paid off. Does it mean that the war in the Middle East is over? The answer is no. Hamas is not indicating a willingness to lay down its arms, and certainly we can see that the governance of Gaza is going to be highly complex. We do know what it means to be held hostage. And I come back to that because I think it is so critical to understand. The psychology of being a hostage is so tough, not only on the individuals, but on the nations involved. And it's not just the United States and Israel. One can say that the Palestinians were held hostage by Hamas, and we can see the reaction to the Palestinian people, to the idea that no longer are they subject to Hamas. But it goes deeper than that. How does one inculcate the idea of freedom? And that brings me to Ukraine. On Friday, President Trump will meet with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. And there is talk now of Tomahawk missiles. We mentioned this last week. And do you understand that from Russia's point of view, from Vladimir Putin's point of view, that is an escalation? Now, we began with a question of hostages, and I want to pose what I think is a legitimate question. Are we, in a sense, as a world, being held hostage over the question of Ukraine, particularly when we talk about an escalating moment? That is to say, the use of Tomahawk missiles. And some in Russia are still speaking about the possibility of nuclear warfare. We understand that these days are difficult for all of us. But I wanted to emphasize and point out that the fact that one crisis is over doesn't mean that the next crisis will pass. The fact that Hamas and Israel, at least now, are not shooting at each other, does not mean that that war is over. Nor does it mean in Ukraine that no matter what we do, this conflict will end. The bitterness and the anger left over from a hostage crisis, the bitterness and the anger left over from a sense of isolation, the bitterness and the anger that is left over between national conflicts. Well, that's a hard thing to cure, a hard thing to tame, a hard thing to correct. But I wanted today to point out that there is rejoicing. Rejoicing, I think, on the part of many, that a conflict which went on for 737 days, just like our 444 days, at least that part of it's over. And I think that is where the plus comes from. Again, I want to address those who say, how can you ever say anything nice about Donald Trump? And the answer is, I remember when Nixon came back from China, and there was a feeling by people that only Nixon could have pulled it off, that Nixon deserved credit for what he had done. And he did. And he was the one who was able to do it. I've often said, if Nixon had lost the election of 68 and Humphrey had done this, why, Nixon, I think, would have been opposed. I think so. I don't know for sure, but at least I can pose the question. And so, for those who were critics of Benjamin Netanyahu and those who are critics of Donald Trump, let this be said. They pulled something off that many thought was impossible. And to their credit, that is a good thing. I am John Rothman, and I want to remind you that you should share this observation. Why not? It's good for people to stop and think. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. And of course, I want you to be encouraged to send me your comments on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and of course my direct email. And may I say, I'm delighted that so many of you do. It really makes a difference. And I want to say a special thank you to GoGo Zoger, who makes sure we are up and running every single day. This is John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow with another chapter in an amazing world around the political world with John Rothman. See you then.